I'm sure this is quite familiar for most of you. You imagine you're working on a project, a coding project, and you just come to realize that in order to work with a specific programming language, you actually have to completely install an entire virtual machine maybe, or some kind of WSL, Windows subsystem for Linux apparently, in order to run certain Ruby related projects. Now if that sounds familiar with you, yeah, you probably understand where I'm getting at. If it doesn't, either way, it's something that I had to learn. My point is, there comes times where you get to a point where you realize the vast amount of information that you still are not even aware of. And this is where you get this temptation to just buy another course and learn everything about that course. You realize, wait a minute, this specific way of structuring my code is not the way that I've been taught in my previous course that I just bought for $500. I'm probably gonna have to buy another $500 course, right? And that's the problem. Courses are not bad. They're not bad in and of themselves. Courses aren't bad, but courses can tend to, it can install a very bad habit in you if you don't know how to properly navigate them. The psychology of courses is the following. You look at a course, so it's all marketing really, but you look at a course and the way they sell it to you is you have this complete package, right? Complete package of modules, and each of these modules contains a set of lessons, and each of these lessons has a detailed explanation of the particular concept. And the way it's presented to you is to provide the illusion of completion, or the illusion of as soon as you complete the entire course or absorb the entire piece of content or information, then automatically you're an expert in the topic. This is very common in the coding, this is very common in the coding world, where you look at this complete 30-hour course, they literally say 30-hour Python course, and automatically the customer is going to be like, oh, okay, so this means that if I finish this complete 30-hour course, that means I'm going to be an expert in the subject, right? I'm going to know everything about Python. Now, although most people might not really consciously think this way, indirectly or subconsciously, they're going to think this way. At least I do. You look at a course, it's a temptation. Like, you look at this course as for a specific programming language or for a specific framework or a specific role maybe, because it's all packaged differently, right? Sometimes courses are packaged in terms of programming languages to learn. Other times courses are packaged in terms of roles to learn. So become a full stack developer, full course, 60-hour course or 100-hour course. Become a front-end developer, 500-hour course, whatever. Become a data scientist, machine learning engineer. So they can either package it in terms of roles or package it in terms of programming languages. But there are different ways of packaging it and also delivering to you the illusion of completion. And that's the problem with courses. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does install a bad habit in the developer or the student, especially in the world of coding, programming, AI, really just learning anything technological based. So the way I like to approach courses is not adopting a linear mindset, but adopting a non-linear mindset. Now, what do I mean by this? When you're reading the docs of a specific programming language, and if you're not familiar with what docs is, the documentation of a programming language, it's like the dictionary for a programming language, right? When you're opening up a dictionary, right, you don't really read an entire dictionary book. None of us really do that, right? We usually just treat a dictionary as a lookup book. If I don't really understand a word or the definition of a word, then I just look it up in the dictionary. There's a specific method to look up a word in the dictionary, right? It's the same thing. The docs of a programming language should be used to, number one, introduce you to the programming language, to the basic syntax of the programming language, and to treat it as a dictionary. So if you don't know what to do or how to code or fix something in your project in relation to the programming language you're working with, then the docs automatically serve you as a dictionary for that programming language for the specific syntax you're trying to resolve. You don't really read the entire docs as if it was as if it was some kind of course, right? We don't really do that. We don't really treat docs as an entire course to complete. But we do, however, treat courses as a sort of Netflix series that we have to watch from zero all the way to the end. And that's what I call linear thinking or linear learning. Non-linear learning is treating courses as if they were just docs, as if they were just documentations or dictionaries. The best way to learn programming or coding or anything that's like tech-based, in my opinion, is through experimentation. Like, I got this idea, let's build this website, let's build this application, let's build this LLM app, let's try it out, let's see what happens. And you're gonna be like, okay, I don't know where to start, I don't know where to begin, so I'm just gonna search up how to build a website in HTML. I heard HTML apparently is something that, structures websites, so let's try that out, right? And if I come into a problem or some kind of bug, then I can go straight to the docs and find out how to debug it. This is the most practical way and the most efficient way to actually learn programming, but it's the messiest way, and it's the least attractive way. It doesn't provide the certainty or the psychological ease that courses provide, and that's why courses sell a lot. Again, I'm not saying courses are bad, they're great. I took courses, like courses are great, but we should treat them not as some kind of enclosed encyclopedia of this concept I'm learning, but rather just as a reference book or like a reference database where I'm just referencing what I need for that specific concept. Now, in the age of AI, things have actually gotten really interesting, and personally, I think courses are dead, but at the same time, they're not. Let me explain. So, courses are now gonna have to update. Like, courses are gonna have to like rebrand. Like, personally, in the near future, courses are gonna have to like rebrand. Instead of rebranding as this thing that you have to binge from zero to the end, right? Instead of selling you completion, courses are now gonna have to sell you which is the best course that allows me to reference what I need in the most efficient way possible, right? Like a dictionary. And the reason for this is because of vibe coding. And yeah, that's crazy, because here's the thing. Before vibe coding, and for any of you who aren't familiar with vibe coding, right? So ever since ChatGPT came out, ever since people realized the power of LLMs and their ability to create amazing code, well, in the beginning it was pretty clunky code, right? But ever since people discovered that, we kind of realized that, okay, maybe, a software engineer's job is dead. Now I totally disagree with that. Software engineering is not dead, trust me. For any person who's really worked with LLM applications and fine-tuning these it's not an easy task. You still need to understand coding in order to build a fully functioning LLM application, or really just any application in general. Now, there are certain things that an LLM could probably just build from scratch and you just telling it to do, but there's still certain things, there's still a degree of uncertainty. Now, when that degree of uncertainty is going to be closed is nobody really knows. I can't tell you that. And I don't think anybody else can really tell you that either. But here's the thing, we're not really at AGI yet. We're not even at ASI yet. We're really far from ASI. And until we have AGI or ASI, then developers don't really have to worry about anything. In fact, I don't think anyone really has to worry about anything at all in terms of jobs being replaced. And I'm not going to dive into this topic for this video yet, because otherwise the video is just going to get super long. I'll probably say that for another video. My point is, ever since we've realized the power of LLMs and their ability to generate code, there's this interesting new role in the technological landscape known as a vibe coder. Before it was kind of like rebranded as a prompt engineer or something like that, but nowadays, people call it vibe coding, in the sense that you don't necessarily need to know coding at all in order to build an application. It's now like, I can now communicate with the LLM as if it was like my assistant or my employee, or as if it was some kind of developer that I just hired, and it could just build out the entire application for me, right? We're just building an application from vibes, right? That's kind of where the term comes from. We're just building the application from vibes, from feels, right? From feelings and intuition, like, oh, okay, this just doesn't vibe for me. Or if there's an error in the application, I just automatically copy and paste that error into the LLM. And surprisingly enough, this actually works pretty well for basic applications. That's the thing, for basic applications. But there's a problem. And the problem seems to be around unknown unknowns. Now let me explain. There are 4 types of knowledge categories or epistemic categories, right? There are the things that we know, right? Known knowns. There are the things that we know that we don't know. So, for example, I know that there is a specific distance from Earth to Mars, but I don't know the exact distance. So that is a known unknown. That is something that I'm aware that I don't know of. Then there's a third, which is unknown knowns. So there are things that I probably know, but I'm not aware of. So those are things that I unconsciously am aware of or unconsciously know about. That's usually instincts or things that are just ingrained in my DNA that I'm probably just not aware that I'm already skilled at. And then there's the 4th category, which is unknown unknowns. Things that I'm completely I'm not aware that there's this thing that I'm supposed to be aware of, but I'm not actually aware of it, right? That's unknown unknowns. And that's the problem with vibe coding. So there is a lot of information and a lot of things to be learned in the whole AI landscape and the whole technological landscape in general. And imagine this. I think the best way to really to really illustrate my point is with an example, a personal example. So when I was first beginning to code, I was actually, I started just getting straight to the mud. Like that's how I like to learn. That's how I am encouraging people to learn. Don't necessarily rely on the perfect course and binging that course from 0 to the end. Focus mainly on experimentation. That's the best way you're going to learn. With AI, it makes it a lot easier because it removes the friction. So I can just tell the LLM, hey, I want to build this application, what do I need? And the LLM is going to be like, okay, so you need to use these programming languages. You need to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You're probably going to have to use these frameworks in order to design the entire application a bit better. And you're going to be like, okay, but what does this do? Okay, what do you mean? There are programming languages for design. Oh, interesting. So there are programming languages for the backend. What is a backend? How does a backend work? This is how you're going to be training your brain to actually ask questions as you're building the application. You can literally prompt the LLM to tell you step by step what you need to do to build a project. You can tell the LLM to, hey, okay, so how do I set up this project? The LLM is going to be like, okay, you need to build a virtual environment. You're like, okay, but what is a virtual environment? As you're building or following the steps that the LLM is basically telling you to follow, you're learning because you're doing it as you're asking questions related to what you're doing. What is a virtual environment, right? Don't just blindly follow the instructions. Also ask the LLM as if it was some kind of private tutor, right? That is when you really get the benefit of learning. That's what I mean when I say courses are dead. But at the same time, they're not, because courses are going to be very useful if you treat them as docs or documentation or dictionaries or references, right? Instead of this linear path that you need to take. So in my case, for example, the way I've learned how to code and I'm still learning how to code is, so let's just start from the beginning. There's this application I wanted to build. I'm not going to say anything about the application just yet, but there's this application that I've been building in the past, that I built in the past, and I asked ChatGPT, I was like, okay, so how do I actually build this application? This is my idea. This is what I envision. What are the necessary tools that I need in order to build this application? Show me the steps. And the LLM was like, okay, so you got to do this, 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 and this. You got to set up this directory. You got to set up this folder. And I'm like, okay, interesting. So I see that for applications, you need to set up directories. Interesting. Give me an example of the type of directory I would need for my specific project. Okay, so based on this tech stack that I recommended you to use in order to build this application, because I'm familiar with Python, so the LLM gave me a tech stack that allowed me to work with Python. So I used the backend framework known as Flask, or is also known as a micro framework. I'm not gonna get into that, but the LLM recommended me that specific tech stack. So I was like, okay, so based on the tech stack that you recommended me with, what is your recommended folder structure or directory? I didn't even know how to word it back then. Again, unknown unknowns. LLM started recommending me a specific directory structure, and I used it. So I set it up manually, right? I just created, right click on my desktop and press create new folder, and then I started renaming and stuff. I didn't know how to use the console or anything. Again, that's an unknown unknown. I didn't know that you could actually use the console in order to create directories. So I did that, and I started coding. So I was like, okay, so I knew that you had to use a coding environment, right? Like Visual Studio Code. That I already knew. So that's an example of a no-no, right? So I use Visual Studio Code to actually create the files, to create the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, the Python files, and then I just copied and pasted the code that the LLM generated onto my files. And you know, it's pretty simple to debug it when you have an LLM with you. You get an error and then you just copy and paste that error. Great. But there comes times where you have to actually understand the error. Otherwise, the model, the LLM, is going to overfit and it's not going to actually solve the code for you. But I'll probably talk about that in another video, like the technicalities or the art of vibe coding. Now, one thing that happened to me was, okay, so this is pretty cool. I created this application. It sucks, right? But I can improve it. Great. How can I improve this application? Well, by modifying the code, adding more files to it and stuff. Beautiful. But this seems to be, I don't know, I want to be able to track the changes in my code base. How do I do that? So my idea, right? I relied on the knowledge that I already had. My idea was just to copy and paste the folder of my project and then rename it to version 2. And I was like, okay, this seems pretty reasonable. And I did that every time I created changes to my code base in order to track my progress. And I added a little note using Notepad to the changes that I've actually made. When I asked the LLM, hey, so I actually did that for the entire application, but then like my computer started just running out of memory. Like I did that for a bunch of iterations for a bunch of folders, and I just had a huge stack of folders of different versions of my application. And then that's when I just this is probably not the most efficient way of doing things. There's gotta be a better method. So I asked the LLM, okay, this is what I'm doing in order to track the changes I'm making in my code base. Is this efficient? And then the LLM was basically like, no, bro, that's stupid. You gotta use Git. So I kind of knew what Git was, but it didn't really register for me. I was like, okay, so Git is what, a version control thing? Like what does Git really do? And these are one of the things in programming where like you learn, like it's the best way to learn these concepts in programming is where you actually encounter the problem. Like you actually encounter the usefulness of the problem yourself instead of reading it in some kind of book or learning about it in some kind of course, because sometimes learning it in the abstract can be a lot more complicated. But once you actually personally encounter a problem, then you're like, oh, okay, so that's what that thing was for. And I kind of had those moments. So like I started creating a bunch of folders to track the changes I've made to my code base. And I even added like these notes on Notepad in order to write down the changes that I've actually made. But like I said before, it was just inefficient because I was just running out of storage on my computer. And either way, it was just inefficient. I knew there had to be some better way of doing things. So I asked the LLM, and yeah, the LLM was like, yeah, use Git, man. So, Git is a version control tool, and as soon as the LLM explained to me what Git was, I was like, oh, so it helps you track the changes to your code base. And what I was doing was, one of the things I was doing, so I had these folders, right? Stacking these folders horizontally, where this folder was the very first version of the app, then version 2, version 3, version 4. But then I was like, okay, I actually want to test a feature of the app. I want to test a feature of the app, so I'm going to create another folder underneath that folder, and I'm going to start like tracking my changes for that specific feature or error I'm trying to debug while I make, the main changes or like the main branch, right, of the application the same. And as soon as I decide to actually implement the feature, then I'll treat that branch, quote unquote branch. I didn't really call it branch, I called it a path. Then I'll treat that path as my main path or my main application. And the terminology in Git is just branches. So you got your main branch, right? You can create a completely new branch in order to test a feature. And when you're ready to if you're actually satisfied with the feature you created,
you can merge that branch onto your main branch, right? So things like that. So that's an example of an unknown that I had that was resolved with the LLM. So that's just a small example. There are multiples of examples you can encounter that in your coding journey. But this is a proper way to actually learn coding, in my opinion, because it's messy, it hits you with reality, but it's best to like get hit by reality from the beginning than after you complete the course. Just get hit with reality from the beginning. Try to remove all the friction you possibly can, right? Because that's what you want to do. Like, you want to remove all that friction. And AI, vibe coding nowadays, actually helps you to remove that friction. It helps you to just get started. It helps you to just like, oh, now you have no excuses to create any apps. Like, I don't know how to code, so like, I'm just gonna be like, I don't have enough money to buy this course, so I'm just gonna like give up. No, now you have no excuses. Now you can actually use AI, whether ChatGPT or some other vibe coding tool. Highly recommend Cursor, not sponsored or anything. Just really good tool, Cursor. Probably the best out there for vibe coding. I'll talk about the different tools for vibe coding another day, but really great tools, and they can actually help you learn how to code because it cuts the friction. It cuts the friction from like, you know, learning in the abstract, okay, strings and while loops, okay, but how does this actually help me build a website? How does this actually help me build an application? If you just automatically get in there, then it becomes a lot easier to learn the syntax. And it actually helps you decipher whether you really want to do front-end development or back-end development is a better thing for you. Or whether if you just want to focus mainly on research, right? So that's all I have to say for today. No courses are not dead, but they do need to be rebranded, especially if especially in the age of AI that we're moving towards. So that's all I have to say. Just a small rant for me today, and I'll be talking about this concept more in detail because I really believe we need to rebrand the way we think, the way we learn, and you know, experimental learning is the thing that I'm trying to promote. Right? Courses are not bad, but we should treat them as references, as tools, as documentation, as dictionaries, more than this year to end thing that I have to binge, right? So that's my rant for today. If you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, a like, whatever you want to call it. Subscribe if you're interested in more. And that's all I have to say for today. Thank you. Bye.